Good morning, this is Garrett, Video Blog 018, and how's it going? It's Memorial Day 2018, and I'd like to talk a little bit today about what it is we're celebrating with Memorial Day. What does it mean? My children have asked for that, and I've heard other people talking about it here recently, just in passing, and I'd like to weigh in. I've got this new video blog thing that I'm doing. I find that it's so much easier to do. I've very much reduced the anxiety that I feel and the time commitment involved in preparing a blog post the way that I used to. And, so it's easier for me to just, if I've wanted to talk about Memorial Day before, or if I've written about topics that were related on Memorial Day or 4th of July in years past. This is probably covering a little bit of old ground for my readers, but it doesn't hurt to cover it in a new way, old ground in a new way, and so I will. But first, I want to do something. I've got my little stand here, my magnetic Magic Mount stand for my phone. And if it'll behave itself and actually stay stuck to the stand or to the desk, then that'll be all right. But I just wanted to show. Well, maybe I can't. I guess I'll just rotate around here, and you can see this is my workstation. This is my home a little bit. There was a desk over there or some other big piece of furniture. I need to touch up the paint on the wall. You'll notice right here that was covered. We kind of pulled some furniture out. I pulled some furniture out and then just, painted a little bit back there. And then I pushed the furniture back in front of it and put the paint away. And then when, you rearrange the room, you move that furniture, then you remember, we should probably come back and revisit that. But anyway, here's how I got my computer set up. I've got my mug. I've got a little bit of clutter on my desk most times. I've got my two monitors that are set up, which I'm really pleased as punch about. I've had these two dual 27-inch widescreen monitors for a while now, and I've had them in a different orientation. I've had them, the traditional. Horizontal orientation forever, since I first got them, and I've had them for several years. And I've got this cool articulating dual monitor stand or mount or what have you, and it clamps to my desk, and then I can rotate this way, that way, tilt the monitors as I see fit, or as it works, as it suits me. And so the idea came to me the other day. I remember what it was I was doing, but I think I know what it was. I was looking on Pinterest. I was seeing these other computer setups, because I follow just a whole lot of different topics, a lot of different boards. I've got a very, very eclectic range of things that I use or look at Pinterest for. But one of them is computer setups. And, eventually, someday, I'll replace this computer, I'll buy a new one, and then this one I'll probably just pass on down to my kids. We'll use it for homeschooling. My last computer that I built years and years and years ago, it needs some love. I need to clean it out and probably replace a component or two that's on its last leg. The computer crashes and it doesn't do that great. But, this one I'll probably pass down to my kids at some point. Then I'll get a new not a new laptop. I've got a nice laptop, good work laptop. I've got a good gaming laptop, and then I've also got this. Let me adjust my brightness here, so I'm not washed out or too dark. No, I'll get a new computer, and at that point, I'm going to refer back to this section on one of my boards where I've got all of these different computer setups Different people have taken pictures of the way that they set up their home computer and their office space and their desk and all that kind of stuff. And I'll use that as inspiration so that I'm very intentional, and I've got my own custom thing. I've put thought into it so that it works well. Because I spend a lot of time at my computer. For me, it's not just for games anymore, although that's what originally got me into computers years and years and years ago. For me, a computer is a battle station. This is my way of extending out the strategy games that I used to play, and recently played. I approach this as an information gathering tool, and I've got my big dual monitor screens. I've got them set vertically now, and I can have multiple things up, multiple feeds at once, and I can move my screens around. Eventually, I'd love to have just a wall of screens, and have some big screens, and have the ability to have multiple things up, and have I've got a computer right now. It still handles it pretty well. I had to clean the dust out of it the other day because it was, I think, overheating possibly. And my 2-year-old son was going around the backside and just pushing the off button for fun while I was trying to do stuff, which is not helpful. I use this thing to take in all this information from various sources about what's going on in the world, what are these various ideas that are being kicked around. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Drudge, I'm on YouTube now, I'm on Pinterest, I'm on Twitter, not so much. I get notifications, but I don't care for how succinct you have to be on Twitter, unless I can share my hour-long YouTube video or my 3,000 word blog articles. If I could share a link to those on Twitter and a brief description, that's all right. But as you can tell, all my videos are about an hour long. And I've thought about it. I was just thinking about it today, too. Because, taking an hour-long video, how many people are going to sit down and watch an hour-long video? And so I was thinking, man, maybe I should go back to the shorter format, doing the short 15, 20-minute, at most, little videos. And then I can, if I talk about 3 different things, I can have 3 separate videos where I talk about each one of those topics in one of those shorter videos. And I'm gonna try and experiment with that a little bit more. But the difficult thing of it is, if I pick 3 topics that are on my mind, I'm not just thinking about any one of those topics in a vacuum, probably. I'm thinking about that individual topic on its own merits, and then also how does it relate to the other topics that are on my mind, and what are the possible connections? What insight can I gain on any one of those issues by looking at it from the perspective of what's going on with the other 1 or 2? And so, if I cut these videos down to 15 minutes, it might be that I'm dissecting and amputating the limbs from the body of my thought, and then it's not going to make as much sense because you're just not going to get the whole picture of why I'm saying what I'm saying. You're going to think I'm a crazy person if you don't already. And that's the unfortunate thing about somebody who's going to click out of the video at the 8-minute mark, 10-minute mark, 15-minute mark, before I've even finished developing my point. But that's on that person. I can't control if somebody has a short attention span or a long attention span. I can influence it, by taking an hour video and trying to talk about substantive things that are worth our attention, worth discussing, worth thinking about, whether you agree with me or not. If I take an hour-long video and you just stick with it, your attention span is getting longer and longer. If I cave in and I say, I'm going to try and appeal to the lowest common denominator, or whatever the average is. If the average is 8 minutes, well, I'm going to try and condense an hour's worth of thought into 8 minutes now. I'm not helping to be the change I want to see in the world. I want to see a change in the world of people with less short attention spans, have longer attention spans. That's what I want. So if you stick around, great. I'm going to try and make it worth your while. And if you click out of it and you don't get the full picture, and then you form a judgment from that, then that's your choice. That's your call, and I'm not responsible for that. So anyway, moving on. Memorial Day. I've got my bullet point list here. I've actually got 4 things I want to talk about today. One or two of them for less length of time than the other 2. But the first thing I want to talk about is it is Memorial Day, and I've got this question in my mind. Do you think Memorial Day is going to be celebrated for much longer? And what I mean by that is, maybe for those that are older, who have grown up and they've seen ebbs and flows, they've seen ups and downs, booms and busts in political philosophy and culture, in the popular imagination of what America should be, the vision of America. You have maybe the 1950s. If you have been alive for a long time, you saw the world as it was in the 1950s, and it was wholesome, and it was Leave It to Beaver. I assume that was 1950s or 60s. And then you see the 70s with the Vietnam War era, and that there's a clash of worldviews, very much so, where the Cold War, you have some people who maybe become turncoats and say they've lost the vision, and they were maybe raised by people that were emotionally broken, psychologically broken from America's involvement in World Wars I and II, and Korea, and they come back and they raise these children, and like my mother, her father had a nervous breakdown because of the things that he saw, the horrific things that he saw in World War II. He was a Navy corpsman and a nurse, helping fix up young men coming back from the front lines, and from the Normandy D-Day invasion. And obviously that was a very, very costly battle, and there were a lot of casualties and a lot of horrible injuries. I'm sure a lot of men were brought back because there was some hope that they could be patched up and healed, and then they didn't, or they died on the way, or they died shortly after arriving, or they died in the process of someone trying to save them. And I'm sure they died in all kinds of horrific ways that would be very, very difficult. I have the utmost respect for somebody who would say that they personally are not okay with taking another person's life. They object to that fundamentally, but they have the courage to go into a war zone and to try and save lives, or to try and provide medical aid, and risk their own life in the process. Because if the enemy decides that they don't want your troops being patched up and brought back and able to fight again another day, maybe they target the corpsman and take him out before he can provide the necessary aid. And obviously, corpsmen, they get shot and blown up and hit by stray bullets as well. So, hats off to EMTs too in the civilian world. I'm sure it's an extremely stressful job, very difficult. Sometimes you probably get a really, really good feeling because you are able to save somebody. And I'm sure there's other times where it is just unbearably painful. I don't doubt that. I can only imagine. But I respect what you do, and thank you for what you do. Memorial Day, you've got men who, they overcome somehow this part of the human mind and psychology, which is built to resist taking another human life, and recoils in horror at the death of other human beings. I read Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman's book on killing, and it was very difficult for me to read. I think he did a very good job of conveying the weight of what's at stake when you train young men to kill, and what are the long-term effects of that past the battlefield. I mean, the battlefield itself, in that moment, that point in space and time, that battle maybe goes on for the rest of that soldier's life up here. Because they relive it, and the sound of fireworks, the sound of a door slamming, something, it takes them back in a moment, and it stays with them. And not to be unkind to anybody who's watching this who is a veteran, and this is hard for you to hear, but I'm not a veteran. I haven't served in the military. My brother was a Marine. Is a Marine. I think probably still identifies. I think Marines are pretty proud of being Marines. He's a Marine still, even though he's no longer active, enlisted or whatever. But he's a Marine. Two brothers-in-law served in the Army. As I mentioned in my video the other day, my grandmother, she served as kind of a Rosie the Riveter in World War II. My grandfather, served as a Navy corpsman, nurse. My grandfather on my dad's side was in the Merchant Marines. So I've got a fair bit of family, a number of friends that have served in the military. I appreciate your service. Thank you for it. Even if you don't always feel like you want to be thanked. And I've heard that too. I've tried to understand as best as a civilian can the nature of the choice that you made when you chose to serve. And there's different reasons different people have. Some people, they enter it because they didn't have anything else going on. And it looked exciting. It looked like an adventure. Some people serve or they enlist because somebody told them to. Some people enlist. Years and years ago, people would get drafted, and whether you wanted to or not, you're in it now, and there could be serious consequences if you back out. In time of national emergency, I think that makes sense to do. I think we should be careful about. I'm very much opposed, very strongly opposed to women being drafted. I think that is this reprehensible part of all of this egalitarianism and feminism and all the rest. Women are women, and you're not drafting my daughter. Don't even try it. It's just not. That does not fly with me. But I've tried to read. I read Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman's On Killing. I've read a number of books on the history of war. Tried to get a grasp in watching movies and reading articles and having conversations with people that have served, that have been on active duty in war zones, who have been fired on, who have returned fire. And it's kind of a difficult thing sometimes. I mean, you got to approach it with respect and consideration. It's not something you can just. I don't think it's honorable. It doesn't honor those who have served, and the weight of what they've been through. Probably if they've served in an active war zone, it doesn't serve them well to just ask out of the blue insensitive questions about their service. But I think, insofar as they want to talk about it, and you're respectful and you want to know, I think it behooves us to try and understand and to encourage them to encourage the good. Not everybody that serves in the military is this hero. There's bad apples in every bunch. That's part of the lot of being human beings born into a sinful world, an imperfect race, And and that's why people serve to begin with, right? I mean, if men had the hearts of angels, not sometimes fallen angels, there would be no war. But you do have villains. You do have Adolf Hitlers. You do have Joseph Stalins. You do have Kim Jong Un's and Vladimir Putin's, who want territory. They want power. They want sometimes you have them in your own country too. The oath that is taken to defend the Constitution from all threats, foreign and domestic. That is an oath, carefully and purposefully, not accidentally worded that way, because you can have threats to the Constitution, to our Bill of Rights, to our freedom, our system of self-government, our republic. Threats from within and without the country. Benedict Arnold was a hero of the American Revolution until he wasn't, until he tried to turn over intelligence and give the British the upper hand. He was a hero, and I think part of what disillusioned him was that he was not getting the recognition and the gratitude and the thanks that he felt himself due. And I've watched a video on him. I've read a number of books that touch on him, even if they're not entirely about him. And I think it's really unfortunate. It may his having turned over to the dark side and gone over to the British. It may say as much about the ingratitude of some of the politicians that were involved as it does about him. Certainly speaks to his maybe regrettable choices in who he married, that his wife was central to his turning over to the British. That's women for you. No, just kidding. Kind of. But we can have, even in our own country, you can have people that identify as Americans that they hate everything that America stands for, and they're fundamentally, philosophically opposed to America as an idea, as a concept, as an institution. And Barack Obama, I mean, he campaigned on the fundamental transformation of America. Because he fundamentally believed that America was broken and flawed, and America was what is wrong with the world. And Obama getting out of office, Obama wasn't the beginning and the end of that problem. Unfortunately, because of dishonesty and a very subversive agenda in education in America, in mainstream media in America, because of what is reported in a dishonest way or very intentionally not reported, also in a dishonest way, to craft narratives, to create popular perceptions of what is and is not true. You have a condition in which half the country, roughly, can vote for a Barack Obama or a Hillary Clinton, in which, in my lifetime, it is very probable that my generation will vote for somebody with the values of Bernie Sanders, but probably more extreme than Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders having this democratic socialist platform, everybody wants to say, well, you can't draw comparisons between what he's proposing and when socialism has actually been tried. You can't do that because we don't want to live in reality land. You can't do that. Don't go bringing evidence and facts and truth into this. Like, we want to just live in a fantasy world. You're bursting our bubble. That's what it is. But Bernie Sanders, he's old, and he's got to try and win over voters that maybe are not totally sold on the socialist thing yet. But my generation, we all too many of us are thinking that Bernie Sanders sounds pretty good. Free college sounds pretty good. Free healthcare, we've already, that's become the new status quo. So then what's the next thing? And a David Hogg, if he gets up, he says, hey, we need to ban all the guns, take all the guns away. If some idiot lawmaker from California says just go the whole way, it's going to be messy, but do the gun confiscation thing. It's time. We just have to. Do it for the children. My generation is all too ready to accept that. And it won't surprise me at all if Memorial Day stops being celebrated in our lifetime. That is the current trajectory that we're on generationally. It's not, and you might say your parents are more conservative than that, your grandparents are more conservative than that, but guess what? Time flies, and they're not going to live forever, and have those values been ingrained in the next generation? Does the next generation have any time? Are they even willing to listen and hear as those values are communicated? Or have they already been brainwashed to the point where you can have these walkouts, proposing the abolishment of the Second Amendment? Little kids being lured into this propaganda machine, and all too happy to be part of it. If it gets them in front of the camera and gets them 5 minutes of fame, or if that gives them a warm and fuzzy feeling because their teacher patted them on the head and said they were a good girl and a good boy, if they became leftists. At the very least, the psychological discomfort of being the odd man out and being against that agenda is going to be too much for most Americans, for most young millennials, unless something changes. Something can change, something needs to change, and I hope it does. And obviously that's why I'm here. That's why I'm talking. I think Memorial Day should be celebrated. I'm glad it's Memorial Day. I'm glad we have a day set aside where we try and thank and appreciate the gifts of liberty, which have been, initially we fought the British to govern ourselves, and I think personally, and I could be wrong on this, but I think that was a worthy fight. I think self-government is a worthy goal. I think it's essential that we have a small government outside of us, over top of us, to oversee national defense, to come and help you if somebody's trying to murder you, break into your house. I think that's essential, but the more power you give to the government and to bureaucrats to bless and damn you, the less you have any self-government. So we slowly but surely, we're giving up our liberties, and if we've bought the lie and we go socialist, California, those crazy Californians, they just recently were talking about doing away with, I think it was Memorial Day. They wanted to do away with it, stop recognizing it as a holiday in their state, and in replacement, they wanted to celebrate May Day. And May Day is this communist holiday, and that's no big surprise. California is extremely, liberal's the wrong term. And we use this term, we let them use this term, liberal, but they're socialist. They're the Socialist Republic, People's Republic of California, and so they why wouldn't they want to celebrate Communist Day? And why wouldn't they hate Memorial Days when you've got America inconveniently stopping the spread of communism? No wonder you didn't like the Vietnam War. No wonder you didn't like the Korean War. You don't respect the War on Terror and the war, the Cold War, because you wish for a similar kind of totalitarian state where everything is decided for you, and you just get to do whatever you please. As far as there being no Christian God, you're in this reckless flight from the God of Christianity, and you don't even care that you're running into the path of a Mack truck when it comes to Islamism and communism and Marxism and all that. And you're a willful, stubborn child, America, if you run to those things because you're just trying to get away from being accountable to the God of the Bible, and having this system of self-government by which the country was founded, on whose principles America was founded, and through whose guidance men were able to self-govern effectively. And they were able, not perfectly, but in an unprecedentedly prosperous way in the history of man, to be able to govern themselves, govern their own affairs, their economic affairs, their homes, their businesses, their communities. Anyway, I think it's important. We don't just thank our soldiers, our sailors, our Marines, our airmen. It's important we remember what is it that they would be fighting for that was worth fighting for anyway. If there is no good and evil, if there is no right and wrong, if there is no truth and falsehood, they're one and the same. They're everything and nothing, depending on what you feel like and what you want. There's no way we can honor them by abandoning our principles. There's no way we can honor what these men died for by giving the country over to socialism. And I think the biggest way we could honor them is by getting it straight in our minds what kind of a country we ought to have, and being very clear about that day in and day out, not on one day a year, but day in and day out, to make this the kind of country worth fighting for and worth dying for, by our individual actions, by our commitment to principles, by our commitment to liberty and self-government, and real liberty and self-government, not liberty of the government's going to take care of me by giving me everything that I want for free and taking it away from the rich. Not liberty in the sense that I can just have sex with whoever I want and then get an abortion. Not liberty in the sense that I could be a boy if I'm a girl, just say that I'm a boy, and be free from reality, biological reality, and then be free from other people frowning at me and saying, you're actually not that, what you claim to be, and we don't have to call you something that you're not, and join your delusion and affirm and support your delusion. That's not the kind of liberty that we need. We need the kind of liberty in which we're actually able to choose whether to affirm things like that, where we're able to choose whether to start a business or what kind of a business to start, and how to run it, how to operate it. Or we're free to choose where our kids go to school. We're free to choose where we want to live, what to do for a living. Free to express our faith and our convictions. We should be free as Americans to say this is what we stand for, and not to be punished for that, not to be persecuted for that, not to be censored and silenced in our own country. Facebook, what Facebook and Twitter are doing, what these American companies that started in America, companies that benefited directly from free market principles, from having the liberty. They're founders. You founders of these companies, you had the blessings of liberty because good men died. They gave their lives, and some of them very young ages, before they'd even really started living. They left families, they left potential families that they hadn't either had the time to have, because they went off to war right away in a moment of emergency. There's good men that died so that this country could be free, so we could have liberty. And doggone it all, if all of these social media giants, America invented the internet and invented computers and automobiles and aircraft because of free market principles. And Facebook and Twitter and Google and all the rest, you've decided to go global and then sell out. And if the European Union or the Muslim countries or China or whatever tells you that you've got to compromise on American liberty and you've got to undermine American liberty in order to get into their country and make some money, you've sold out. You've compromised and you've eroded our freedoms here at home and are continuing to by censoring conservatives, by censoring your fellow countrymen. Shame on you. You know, I did a video the other day, moving on, but it's related. Yeah, I did a video about Black Panther. Just watched Marvel's latest movie, superhero movie. I liked it. I thought it was original. I thought it was cool. Black Panther. Trump's recent remarks about MS-13 gang members being animals. And so far, it's gotten two thumbs down. It's got one thumbs up, but that was from me. I was trying to counterbalance, counteract the first thumbs down. It's got two thumbs down, and nobody's left any comments. Shame on them. You know, I'd love it if somebody would leave some comments if you dislike my video. If you dislike it enough to not just click out of it, but to do the thumbs down deal, explain why. I mean, just come on. Don't be lazy. You know. I don't know what they didn't like, but at least two guys didn't like it. And so anyway, that's to be expected. It was a long video. I said a lot of things. Whatever, you know, so what? Moving on, another related thing. You know, I saw something, this guy who's trying to make a movie about Roe versus Wade was interviewed last night. I think he was interviewed by Tucker Carlson. And so they're making this Roe versus Wade movie about the real story of the court case which led to the legalization of abortion in America. And that's a movie I would go see. I think it would be probably difficult to watch, but I would like to know that story. I'd like to have other people know that story. I think that's a story that needs to be told. And, you know, if Roe versus Wade, if the left thinks that was so conclusive and the Supreme Court thought that was conclusive, well, that's a story that they should want to have get out as well. You know, what objection would the left have to the story of Roe versus Wade being told? You know, but apparently they do object because maybe that's a story that you know, if Americans knew, then they would do something about the situation with abortion in America. So these guys, Jon Voight, the actor, Angelina Jolie's father, actually, for anybody that didn't know. Jon Voight, the actor, very conservative. He's involved in the movie project. But Tucker Carlson was talking with, I think it's the director, and you know, the director's explaining that they tried to raise money and couldn't get anybody interested in Hollywood. Go figure. The Socialist People's Republic of California doesn't want the truth getting out about abortion. That's a shocker. So they couldn't raise any money there, so they started, you know, they tried to do, I think, some kind of a GoFundMe page or something like that. They said they were having difficulty with that, so they created their own website in which they were going to raise money to make this movie. And then they were going to use Facebook to get the word out, to share, have a Facebook page, and to share the link and to, you know, get the word out that they are trying to make this movie and looking for people that would be interested in helping to support that. And so Facebook wouldn't allow them to run advertisements and wouldn't allow people to share links to their page. Even purportedly, Alveda King, niece, I think, of Martin Luther King Jr., she couldn't even share a link to this page where they're trying to raise money. So Facebook obviously obstructing, again, no big shock there. Zuckerberg is a liberal, a leftist, and he's I think, weaponized Facebook against conservatism pretty consistently. Has no great love for conservative thought. He's a Democrat through and through. And so, then they raised a little bit of a stink about it. They said, well, why can't we share links to our page here? Why can't we take out advertisement? This is ridiculous. And so then, Facebook finally says, well, okay, all right, we'll let you. That's fine. But even in that case, where they're now allowed to supposedly share and advertise, they find that they're shadow banned, and that even with advertisement and with sharing, that Facebook is hiding the links and hiding their page and not allowing it to show up in people's feeds. So they're effectively, they're and for people that aren't familiar with this, shadow banning is you're banned, you're invisible, but you don't know you're invisible. You don't get a message saying that you've been banned. For all intents and purposes, you think that you've shared it and it's visible to everybody. But, basically, these social media sites, just like your privacy settings. So, you share something. Say I take a picture of this coffee mug and I share it to Facebook, for instance. I can set my privacy settings where I can have this be public, where anybody at all, even if they're not friends with me, we're not connected, anybody at all can look me up and they can see that I posted this picture here. And I can also set it to where it's only friends of friends. And so if I tag somebody, if I tag my wife, then people that are her friends, they would also be able to see. And then there's also, you can have it where it's just your friends. And in that event, only people in your friends list can see it. If you tag somebody else, then only your mutual friends. It wouldn't count if their friends are not friends with you. Only your mutual friends could then see that picture of your coffee mug. Just hang with me for a second here. If you can do that, if Facebook has created the tools where you can be selective and decide who can see and who can't see, then what's to prevent Facebook from saying, and your friends won't see. They don't see your privacy settings. Now, what's to prevent Facebook from saying, we're going to change your privacy settings to only me? And that's an option. Because there's public. If I click the privacy settings little globe button on this thing that I just shared today, it asks who should see this. Option 1, public. Option 2, friends. Option 3, friends except, so don't show it to some friends. Option 4, specific friends, only show it to some friends. Option 5 is only me. So then I can see it. It shows up when I look, but nobody else can see it. You could do specific friends. And I think this happens to a very great extent, more than people have any idea. They don't know, they don't research to know, they don't want to know. It's too disturbing once you start to talk about it, so then they just kind of tune out. They say, like this is a Twilight Zone episode. But except that it's not. It's a real thing, and it happens, and it is happening, and don't be ignorant of it. You should be aware of the way that the world works, what's actually going on. What you're seeing online is being very carefully curated, shown in a certain specific order, so that you develop certain impressions and you don't develop certain other impressions. And so, let's say for hypothetical, somebody shares this link to the GoFundMe page or whatever it is for this Roe versus Wade movie that somebody's trying to make, and they share it. They think it's public. It says on their end that it's public, but that's a very easy thing for Facebook to, it's like the old trick in the spy movies where they're trying to break in and steal the painting, and they insert a clip from when nobody was walking down the hallway, and they hijack the feed of the security camera, so the security guard sees that hallway is empty, and meanwhile they divert the live feed, and they just have a recycled feed of when nobody was walking down the hallway playing, so the security guard thinks, oh, there's nothing wrong. There's nobody breaking in trying to steal the painting. So also it could show that you think you've just shared this link so that you get the word out about this Roe versus Wade movie, when in reality they've adjusted it to where only you can see. They've adjusted it possibly to where only specific friends can see, and that would be easily enough. They could say, and Facebook categorizes, even if you don't self-identify what your political philosophy is, they've figured out, they've done research on, they can identify what your level of education is, what your religious beliefs probably are, what your political persuasion probably is, by the kinds of movies, music, books that you have liked, by the kinds of pages that you follow, even if they're not overt in their message and their morals. Facebook has algorithms, and they have methods of identifying if you are very conservative, moderate, liberal, very liberal, etc. And so let's say hypothetically, they don't want the swing states. Let's say this was an election, and Ohio is a swing state, Florida is a swing state. They don't want the swing states, your friends list that is in the middle, and they could be persuaded. They're open to having their minds changed. They don't want the swing states seeing what it is that you just shared about Roe versus Wade. They've identified that 5 of your friends on your friends list of, I don't know how many people most folks are friends with. I think it's like 200 and something, the average friends list length on Facebook. But let's say, 5 out of your 200 friends are very conservative. They've already made up their mind. They are on the same page as you about Roe versus Wade. They think it was a travesty. They think it should be overturned. Facebook has flagged them. Well, there's no harm in them getting it. I mean, they're already in that frame of mind. So they can see that you've shared this now. See? And nobody's going to be persuaded by that. So, okay, we've got you guys suspended. And if those friends, if they consistently like your posts and you think, okay, cool, yeah, all right, other people can see what I'm posting here. Well, then great. They've just maintained the illusion. There's another possibility. Friends accept. Don't show to some friends. So they could do this another way, where you're shadow banned, and Facebook identifies all of the people who are most influential, who, if they got a hold of this information in their personal life, in their public life, they would be able to make a difference. And so they flag those guys, and they say, whenever you, Garrett, share something about Roe versus Wade, we're going to make sure that these people don't see it. They're either undecided or they're highly influential, and if they get persuaded of the position that you're advocating, then we're in a pickle. This position is in a pickle. This political issue, the candidacy of our favorite person that we're trying to support subversively and behind the scenes is in jeopardy. And so we don't want, we want to, friends accept is going to be the privacy setting on posts of this nature that you're sharing, political posts. If you take a picture of your cat and you post that, a funny cat video of I just shared it last night. I ran across this video, and it's put out by Now This. And it's this ridiculous sound that lynx will make when they're upset with each other. There's these 2 lynx that are found in the middle of this road, and they're having a face-off, and this is the sound that they're making. And it's absurd and it's funny, but there's no risk, there's no hazard of anybody being persuaded of a political opinion that the powers that be don't want them to have, from that being shared, and from everybody on your friends list being able to see that, or from more people being able to see that. And so, you know, what is it that I find as I scroll down and I look? There's three people who have liked that. There's been 6, 7, 8 comments on it, back and forth discussion, and you know, so that's great. You know, another one I've got this meme. Pepperidge Farm remembers. Remember when you wanted body cams to find bad cops? Now it turns out that 99% of cops are good. People are just liars. Pepperidge Farms remembers, and it's this picture from Family Guy of you know, it's this funny thing. And I noticed, you know, there's four friends of mine that have liked that. No discussion, but you know, I wasn't really expecting a whole lot of discussion on it. That's fine. Then I share Ireland ends abortion ban as quiet revolution transforms country. No likes, no comments. I shared it right after sharing this meme, right after sharing this video of the links. You know, and all it would take would be that either A, you know, my friends here have said they only want to see this kind of content. Facebook conducted a poll and asked, do you want to see political content? You know, the 3 friends that liked this video of the cats, the lynx roaring at each other. Maybe they said, yeah, I don't want to see political content. I'm tired of it. I'm burnt out on it. And so now they just see lynx roaring ridiculously. A 1 minute, 20-second video of that. And that'll show up in their feed when I post it. That sort of content that I share. And then this other set of friends, you know, they respond to, they like typically these kinds of posts. So they've shared similar posts before, so they're in a safe category where you know, this content is going to show up in their feed and they're going to respond to it. You know, and that's possible. And it's also possible that Facebook shadow bans this third post that I made the exact same time, just a little bit, I mean, just right after, like within 30 seconds of sharing these other 2 things, where I post this video or this link. It's not even from an unsafe source. It's from Reuters.com. This article: Ireland ends abortion ban as quiet revolution transforms country. So abortion is now legal in Ireland. And you just imagine yourself, you know, imagine you're an Irish young person, and Facebook has manipulated your privacy settings, and you're upset by abortion, and you share something, and none of your friends can see what you're sharing. If it's going to have any effect on the public discourse, it's going to get put so low on the feed, and they're going to show your friends article after article, meme after meme. Attractive celebrity like Bono after attractive celebrity. They're going to show all that stuff in your feed first, to where that's your first impression of the issue. That creates your feeling about the issue, and then by the time your friends see your post about abortion, they've already made up their mind. They're burnt out on the issue. They don't want to see anything political. They just want this to go away, so they're either not going to get involved to oppose abortion, or they're going to actively support it themselves and get upset at you persisting and continuing to argue the point. You know, so that's a possibility, and I am absolutely convinced that that's happening. You know, imagine you're somebody in the middle. You're trying to decide, well, what do I want to? What are people saying about abortion? What is the thought on this? What are the arguments on the different sides? And you log into Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and all you're seeing is argument after argument, celebrity after celebrity who's saying everybody should be free to have an abortion on demand whenever they want. Ireland is backwards. All the other all the other countries are doing it, so it must be all right. You know, we don't want to be backwards. It's just time. Do it for the children. Except you're doing it for not having children. Actually, not doing it for the children. And so all you're seeing is, you know, and it wouldn't even have to be all. I mean, maybe every now and then a pro-life argument slips through, but they could pick the weakest of the bunch. You know, it could be like the ancient Roman gladiators. You know, if you decided you're going to have a pitched battle, we're going to reenact the Punic Wars, And these gladiators over here are going to be the Roman centurions, and these guys over here are going to be the Carthaginians. And since this is Rome and we want the Romans to win, we're going to pick the nice, big, strong gladiators to play the Romans. We're going to pick the wimpy, weak, sickly gladiators to play the Carthaginians. And we're going to have a pitched battle. And, oh, lo and behold, the Romans win. Who would have thought, you know? and Facebook could do the same damn thing. And I mean damn thing because it is damnable. That's not a slip of the tongue. It is imperative we know that this is happening and that we're actively engaged in reading, formulating opinions. Not just reading, formulating opinions, but having a discourse, practicing critical thinking skills, talking with people that disagree with us. Because for one thing, you talk with somebody you disagree with, and you might learn some things, develop some additional perspectives on your view, even if your view doesn't change. You'll sharpen and clarify your thought process. The next thing is, you might share some things with them that they really need to know in order to have a well informed view and to have the right position and to not support something that's wrong or evil or foolish. And if you're not willing to talk with people you disagree with, if you're always hiding their content in your feed because you just want to pictures of cats and funny videos of cats, wild lynx meowing at each other ridiculously till it sounds like a voiceover from a real person, then you're depriving yourself and the rest of everybody. And we need to be bigger than that. We need to be more mature than that, and grow up. The world needs us to grow up. This Memorial Day, you've got men that went and died to defend liberty, the right to free speech, and with great power comes great responsibility. We have a responsibility to exercise free speech in a meaningful way, to be good stewards of what it is to speak, and to make the most of every opportunity to speak on behalf of the good and the right. And anyway. So that is, now we're 3 topics down. Fourth topic is, last but not least, there was something that showed up in my Facebook feed, because I'm in the very conservative camp. Facebook has categorized me as very conservative, even though I self-identified as independent, I do believe, because I reserve the right to disagree with everybody and anybody, save God himself, about anything, if I think they're mistaken. Marco Rubio, case in point, he's a Republican, and I thought he did all right when he ran for the Republican nomination for president. I didn't know a whole lot about him, but he presented well. He was not my favorite. I had concerns, and boy howdy, it looks like it was the right thing to not support him in the primary. I was more in favor of Ted Cruz, Rand Paul. I think they're on the side of liberty, and so yeah, and even Ben Carson. I think he seemed a little bit gun shy, but I mean, so much of the process is lights and clockwork. It is artificial, and it is designed to scare guys like that out of it, and to weed out anybody that would be really authentic and sincere and have decency. Good morning, son. And so anyway, Marco Rubio has introduced what one group is referring to as a national gun confiscation bill. It's the National Association for Gun Rights. And they write, and I'll read this for you. Nobody's coming for your guns except for the 6 sponsors of this national gun confiscation bill introduced by Marco Rubio, Republican, in the U.S. Senate. Maybe he was president of the College Democrats at his conservative Christian university. I don't know. Sign your petition to stop this bill. And then they've got a link to a petition that they've started up. They said, drop Mitch McConnell. These key Senate Judiciary Committee members align on Facebook. Tell them to block all versions of gun confiscation orders, especially this one. So The other sponsors of this bill are Joe Manchin, Angus King, Democrat and Independent, Susan Collins, Republican, Bill Nelson, Democrat, Jack Reed, Democrat. So it's bipartisan. But guess what? The Second Amendment is not really up for debate. It's not, unless you're proposing a constitutional amendment, you're wanting to adjust and modify the Bill of Rights, in which case there's a process for that. You can't just come up with some bill where you say, if you're in this, I've read through the text of the bill, and what it basically says is, if somebody, your friends or family or someone else reports you as being a danger to yourself or others, that you could have your guns and ammunition confiscated for a period not longer than 12 months. And so then law enforcement, they're going to come up, they've got this order that says that you're going to surrender all of your firearms and ammunition to law enforcement. Or what? Obviously, if you don't, and if this is the law of the land, and you're resisting, interfering with law enforcement, then that could very quickly turn into a violent confrontation. You could have people that, if they weren't dangerous before, they're going to be dangerous then. You've also got a number of tricky questions that need to be answered. The first and foremost being, who decides when someone is supposedly a danger to themselves or others? If my neighbor was very squeamish about guns, if my neighbor said, "Hey, you've got all these children, I'm concerned one of your children might find a firearm around your house, and they might shoot themselves, they might shoot one of their siblings. I'm going to, if this passes and all that, I'm going to report that you are a danger to yourself or others because you should not own firearms. I don't believe that firearms should be kept." Then I know, I've got a cousin whose wife refused to let him have a firearm in the home because they had a son. And she wouldn't talk about it. We're not going to discuss it. It is out of the question. We're not going to have firearms in our home because we've got our son in our home. And if she was living next door, and she said, "I object to your owning firearms and ammunition and having children in the same home. And how do I know if you're going to store them responsibly and be, and whatever else, and educate your children on gun safety?" If she reports that I'm a danger to myself or others, that these guns are pose a danger to my children or whatever. If my kid eats a Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun and points it at somebody, then are they going to, under this, if it's all fast and loose and not carefully defined and all the rest, am I then at risk or at the mercy of some unreasonable person in this day and age, when even eating a Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun can get a kid suspended, sent home, expelled, what have you. I do not get a warm and fuzzy feeling about this at all. It's a very slippery slope, and it does not respect the rights to due process, which Americans, as a rule, should be afforded under the United States Constitution, under a Bill of Rights. Our rights do not come from the government. It should not be that we start adopting this posture whereby we expect that the government, whatever the government gives us permission to do, that is what we have a right to do, or that our rights come from the government. Our rights are inalienable, God-given, and there was a Revolutionary War. I mean, it's Memorial Day. We're celebrating veterans. Why did these veterans fight and die and give their lives? Going back to the first American Revolution. They fought it for liberty, for self-government, to have a representative form of government which respected their rights and protected rather than trampling on their rights. And in our day and age, people like a Marco Rubio trying to be bipartisan and supporting and introducing legislation like this, et tu, Rubio, you're a traitor to republicanism. You just are. This is not up for debate whether we're going to have Second Amendment rights under the Constitution, unless you want to go and you want to amend the Constitution. But even there, these rights are inalienable and God-given. We are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these, not limited to these, are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Someone saying that I don't have the right to protect my life, protect the lives of my wife and children. If they just decide arbitrarily that they're not just opposed to having a firearm and owning a firearm, but that they don't want me to have a firearm, they don't want my children to have a firearm, or be around firearms, or be exposed to them, or whatever, you have completely ignored and overlooked the Second Amendment. If that is your view and your attitude and your posture, this should absolutely be defeated. It is of the utmost importance that it be defeated, especially in a day and age when censorship of voices, conservative thought on social media is on the rise, when social media giants are being increasingly transparent about their intent to censor conservatism. When in a day and age when someone coming and speaking at a university, you might have to call riot police because the young people in the universities are becoming violent and destroying property, rather than allow a Ben Shapiro or a Milo Yiannopoulos to have anything to say that challenges their worldview. And I'm not a fan of Milo. I like Ben Shapiro, but if a Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, someone like that wants to come and speak at a university, and young people are becoming violent because they have taken free speech that disagrees with them as an attack on them, which they're now permitted to respond to with deadly force. And then you want to also talk about taking away the right to keep and bear arms. What happens? Well, just hypothetically, what happens? I share a YouTube video, I share a Facebook post where I take a position very strongly against the left, and I disagree with their pet policies and their proposals and their laws that they're wanting to impose on us, and I disagree with their moral bankruptcy, et cetera, et cetera. What happens? A group of Democrats, they get really upset about that because they somehow, some way are able to see it online. And what happens if I start getting a reach? I start, I'm able to actually get my message out there, and I start having an influence, and some Democrat decides he doesn't like that. He wants to come and put a stop to it, and wants to come silence me for the greater good. He wants to terminate my life. He dehumanizes me. Should I be deprived of the right to defend myself? Absolutely not. Not in America. This is America still, and by golly, again, Memorial Day, we need to remember what it means to be a country that is founded on liberty and self-government, and what is necessary for self-government. We need to take it seriously when that is infringed on, and when people are proposing things which would undermine our liberty. We need to take that seriously. We need to be paying attention and to oppose that and raise our voices, make our objections known, not ignore it, not go. You want to honor veterans. you don't let the country go down the tubes. We're not speaking German today in part because my grandparents got involved. Even if it wasn't going out and shooting Nazis and shooting the Japanese emperor's troops or fighting Mussolini's fascists, even if they weren't directly involved in combat, they got involved and they supported that war effort. And if they had not, we would be speaking German, or else we would not be here because we would have been put to death because we're not of the proper ethnicity. And I think we face dangers no less real in our day and age. The only question is going to be, do we have the moral clarity, do we have the resolve to stand up similarly in whatever ways we can? Maybe calling your senator is not in your comfort zone. Well, write them a letter. Get involved in some way, shape, or form. Educate yourself, educate your children, educate your friends. Remember what it is that this country needs in the way of a republic. A republic is what we have. We have a Republican form of government. I'm not talking about Republican Party versus Democrat Party. This is the system of government we have is a republic. We are a nation of laws, and we will only be blessed and have prosperity and liberty to the extent that we have laws which are enacted and enforced, which are conducive to liberty and prosperity. So anyway, that's all I have to say for today. I think that's an hour and 11 minutes. This might be among my longer videos, but I had 4 topics instead of 3 or 2, and so thank you for indulging me. If you watched all the way to the end, God bless you, God bless America, and let's just pray for our country that God would bring our country back into a state of affairs in which it can be blessed. If we are hostile to God, if we are foolish and just willful, and we want to be the little child that refuses to stop when called, as they run out into the street in front of a speeding Mack truck. God's under no obligation to save our country. He's under no obligation to bless that eternally. And sooner or later, consequences hit. And so anyway, God be with you if you're on the side of the right and the good, and have a good day. Thank you.